Good afternoon. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of The Edge on IC Radio, your source for news and entertainment. You can also find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications, and Abundant Television, which is found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. I'm just a history buff. I love to know what happened hundreds of years ago. How did they survive without the conveniences we have right now? What did they do in their spare time, if they had any spare time? What did they eat? How did they socialize? I mean, just what did they do? So I found this real good article right here, and it's at history.com. History.com, and this article mentions 7 common foods eaten in the 13 colonies. This is really interesting. Now, the things we can go back in history, and if we were to have a rough time, maybe the supply chain gets broken and we can't get food in the grocery stores, there are things we can learn from what people did back in history, back in the day. So from potted meat to pickles, here are some foods and beverages that were popular in colonial America. So I really like what they state here. What people ate in the colonial America largely depended on where they lived, due to differences in climate. Yeah, I can see that. North and the South, man, total different makeover. Available natural resources and cultural heritage of the colonists themselves. Now, the daily diet of a New Englander differed greatly from his counterparts in the middle colonies, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And even more so with the folks who lived in the South like we do. But one constant across all 13 colonies was that aside from imported goods such as spices, we talked about spices on another show just a couple episodes ago, molasses, rum, people in the pre-Revolutionary War era mostly consumed food they produced by themselves, which could be something we're going to have to learn how to do. They sowed corn, they caught fish, they hunted wild game, and they raised farm animals for meat as well as milk to make their own butter and cheese. You can make cheese, I've done it. So I got some fresh milk from a farmer just to see if I could do it. And and it can be done. And then also cheese you make yourself, as long as you prepare it the correct way, that cheese can last several decades. They planted vegetables in their vegetable garden, in the kitchen garden. They brewed their own whatever and pressed their own cider. Now, though regional, seasonal, and other differences make it difficult to generalize about a typical colonial diet, the following 7 foods and beverages are a small sample of what might have been found on many colonial tables. One of those, and I think this is absolutely beautiful, one of those would be Indian corn. Look at that, it's beautiful. Now sometimes we can find this particular corn and use it for decoration, put it up in the kitchen or whatever, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful corn with its multicolored white, blue, red, and brown hues. Flint corn is what that's called. Also known as Indian corn, is one of the oldest varieties of corn, and it was a staple food for Native Americans who essentially saved the earliest colonists from starvation by teaching them how to plant the crop, when to harvest it, and how to grind it into meal. Now, corn became a dietary staple across all 13 colonies, and cornmeal was used in favorite recipes such as hasty pudding. And what that was corn boiled in milk. And Johnny cakes. I remember hearing about Johnny cakes, a fortifying and highly portable food similar to pancakes, and I would assume cornbread came out of that. Let me give you a really good recipe for cornbread. Now, cornbread is all about how it looks. So I'm not giving you exact measurements, okay? But let's just say we put 1 cup of cornmeal. Now you can have, and this would be a self-rising type cornmeal. So, and you can use yellow, white, it's all the same. We just like it's prettier when it's yellow. So let's say to 1 cup of cornmeal, we want to add, or I do, add about a 1/2 cup of self-rising flour. So you'll mix those 2 ingredients up together. And I'll tell you something else I like to do. While I'm mixing the cornbread, what I like to do is have the skillet in the oven. I'm turning on about 350 degrees. We want to preheat it. I'll go on ahead and put whatever oil I'm going to use. I use olive oil, sometimes just regular vegetable oil you can do. And I'll put that in the skillet. I love to make my cornbread in a skillet. So I'll put it in the skillet and then get it really, really hot while I'm mixing the ingredients. Okay, so we mentioned the 1 cup of cornmeal and then 1/2 cup of flour. You can put an egg if you like to do that, but I'll tell you, if you're in a real pinch and you're in a real hurry, if you have mayonnaise, mayonnaise has everything in it you're going to need, so including eggs. So I'll go ahead and put a couple tablespoons of the mayonnaise in there, and I'm going ahead and kind of stir it up just a bit. Now, if you're using eggs, go on ahead and crack your egg, and go on ahead and kind of stir that up with a fork until you kind of get the yolk and the whites mixed up together. Then you'll toss it in there. Okay, milk, I like to use buttermilk. So I'll put enough milk. I'll put a cup just to start with, just to begin with, just to kind of get everything mixed up. Now the consistency you want this is not going to look like a dough or anything like that, but it's not going to be as runny as a pancake either. So what you'll do is get enough to where when you just get your spoon and dip it, it just kind of dollops down. So that's good cornbread right there. And that's all it takes. Just cornbread. You got a little bit of butter, melted butter if you'd like to do that as well. Going ahead and take the skillet out of the oven, put the cornbread in the cornbread mix, put all of that into your skillet, and it's almost like it fries it. And it'll make this sound, it's like a sizzling sound. You know you've done it right when you hear that. Going ahead and put it back into the oven, put it in there for about 30 minutes, and you got some good cornbread. Then you don't need a mix. You can use that, and it is awesome, awesome. Sometimes people will add cracklings. You've heard of crackling cornbread? And my grandparents used to do crackling cornbread all the time. And they would put that in the cornbread. Sometimes Phil likes cheese. I'll put cheese in there. And then I like to put herbs. Sometimes I'll go ahead and put some chives in there. Chop those up. You can either do fresh or you can do dried, either way. And then every once in a blue moon, I'll go ahead and add about a half a packet of dry ranch dressing. Now, if you don't have the mayonnaise, but you just happen to have some ranch dressing, you know you can use that instead of mayonnaise and oil. And put just a little bit of milk. Do about a half a bottle. If you got an 8-ounce bottle, it'll be about 4 ounces of ranch dressing, and then put enough buttermilk in there to where it kind of dollops. You know, it's kind of runny. It's not like a cake batter, and again, it's also not like a pancake batter. It's got to be a little bit thicker than that. So that's our corn. Absolutely. All right, now there's something else they used to eat, and that was wild game, including a pigeon. So let me put a picture up there so you can see that. So that's pigeon right there. Looks like he's is he in the winter weather? It looks like it, because it looks like the trees are kind of dead. Might be snow on the ground right there. But they did like to eat wild game, including a pigeon. They had turkeys and wild turkeys and all those things running out there. So colonial forests were packed with wild game, turkey, venison, rabbit, duck. They were staples of the colonists' meat-heavy diets. Now, in addition to these better known by modern standard options, many colonists enjoyed eating passenger pigeons. Never ate pigeon before, have you? I don't know if I'd like that. I mean, if it took starving to death, I'd probably go ahead and eat it. The birds were incredibly plentiful in colonial times, and the meat was prepared in many ways, including they boiled it, or maybe they roasted it. They also baked it into pies, similar to the way we kind of do chicken today, like a chicken pot pie. Passenger pigeon was such a popular dish, in fact, that the birds eventually went extinct. People were buying it so much. So the last known passenger pigeon died in 1914. Little trivia, we didn't know that. Like many colonial dishes, pigeon pie had British roots, and a recipe was included in Eliza Smith, that's Eliza Smith's The Complete Housewife, or Accomplished Gentlewoman's Companion. And I'd like to get that cookbook. It's a cookbook originally published in London that became the first to be published in the colonies in the year 1742. Now, the popularity of Smith's book reflected on the dominant influence of British cuisine in the colonial diet. The Complete, and she spells it Compleat, The Complete Housewife would likely have been found in any well-to-do household in the late colonial era, when the midday dinner would consist of 3 courses, the multiple dish per course. So they were eating high-end British food, says Lavonda Nahon, a culinary historian specializing in the mid-Atlantic region from the 17th to the 19th centuries. We're not talking about post-industrial British cuisine here. We're talking about the height of British food. Let's go on ahead and cut into a commercial break, and we're going to be right back in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about potted meat, pickles, jumble cookies, pepper cake, and syllabub. I can't wait to find out what in the world that is. We'll be right back in just a minute. Hang in there. At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant. Let Rhonda at Rhonda's Elite Tax LLC take the burden off you for all your tax needs. I know because Rhonda has been taking care of my business since 2013. I feel Rhonda works for me because she knows the direct questions to ask to better benefit my unique business in order for me to get back the biggest refund possible. Rhonda is an ongoing student, and she knows tax laws are in a constant change every year. Call 256-281-9903 for an appointment to take the dread out of getting your taxes done. Rhonda is located at 11968 U.S. Highway 431 in Boaz. Again, that number is 256-281-9903. And let Rhonda's Elite Tax LLC champion your personal and business taxes. Jeff McCurdy of the McCurdy Law Firm has been a public service of this area for over 10 years. McCurdy, a member of the Henniger City Council, serves as prosecutor for the town of Sylvania and was named public defender for the city of Rainsville. The McCurdy Law Firm is located at 17326 Alabama Highway 75 in Henniger to better represent his Jackson and DeKalb County clients. If you need to be represented by a true public servant with proven success, call Jeff at 256-996-8701 or send a private email to mccurdylawfirm@gmail.com. No representation is made that the legal services performed is greater than the legal services performed by other lawyers. At Liberty Bank, we're all about community, whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need. Toys at Christmas or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender. The Hatter Cafe and Country Inn is nestled in the northeast corner of Alabama the Beautiful in the delightful town of Mentone. We're located on top of scenic Lookout Mountain near Little River and DeSoto State Park and located only 5 minutes from shopping and restaurants. There is also a nearby community walking path and golf course. We welcome everyone through the doors and we are committed to outstanding service for all guests. At the Hatter Cafe and Country Inn, we invite people from all walks of life to come and get away from it all, enjoy the open spaces, treetop views, fresh, clean air, and experience Southern hospitality at its finest. We look forward to hosting you. To reserve a special event, or if you would love a special getaway at the Country Inn, you can call us at 256-634-2018. Okay, we are back. My name is Donna Feazell, and I'm your host of The Edge on IC Radio, your source for news and entertainment. You can also find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications and Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Again, thank you so much for watching. Definitely appreciate it. You can also find us on the podcast, netnewsnetwork.net. You'll hear some awesome talk show hosts, a variety of topics, all kinds of great things to talk about. And we're back to talk about, I just love history. So I found this article on history.com. Some good stuff in there, I'm telling you. So we're talking about what kind of a diet did the colonists have. So there are 7 common foods, eaten in the 13 colonies. So we were talking just a few minutes ago about the Indian corn, and we saw a picture of that. I just think that's pretty for decoration. It's beautiful. And then also wild game. And that wild game was included your pigeons, including the pigeon, and also turkey, venison, rabbit, and duck. And those were the staple. I like chicken. I think I'll stick with my chicken. Okay, we talked about those things, but let's talk about potted meat. Now, you might at the grocery store, so I'm anxious to find out about this because I'm wondering if it's anything like you can buy at the grocery store, because potted meat in the grocery store, to me, is a mystery meat. You don't know what is in it. I mean, you know, I'm a little bit leery, and it depends on the brand, but in an era long before refrigeration, popular methods of food preparation included drying, salting, smoking, and brining, or some combination of these. So another method used to preserve meat was potting. Oh, this involves cooking the meat and packing it tightly into a jar. Then you covered it with butter, lard, or tallow, that would be beef fat, before capping it. Now, potting kept meat safe for weeks and even months. So cooks would then open the pot and slice off pieces to serve for a meal. I might try that and see what happens. Now let me tell you something. This also has to do with preserving foods. So I was talking with a lady last week, and so she had a suggestion for the show, and that was canning meat. And I said, man, that's got to be done right. I mean, it has to be done precisely. And she said, well, you know what? Will let you know that it's not the right thing. And I said, what? She said, your nose will tell you. I said, you know what, you're right. You got something there. So if I can, because what she's always concerned with, she said, what if we have a bad tornado and we are out of electricity for weeks? She said, I always think about that when I'm canning, when I have meats, and they buy from a local farmer, by the way, like we do. And so the local meats, you know, if they're, first of all, you've got to put those things and put everything like that into the freezer. But she said, my fear is I bought all this meat, because you usually buy a quarter to a half a cow at a time. She said, what if we lose electricity? She says, so she cans all of her meats. Again, I'm a little leery. I may try some of it just to see how it works. But she said, just use your nose. So if there's a weird smell coming out of there, when you open it up, don't eat it. I said, well, that makes total sense, doesn't it? So it sounds like to me, back in those colonial days that we're talking about, we're talking about the 7 common foods eaten in the 13 colonies. It seems to me that potted meat is not some weird mixture of mystery meat like we have now. When we say potted meat now, it's a bunch of, you know. So they dried meat, kind of like beef jerky, stuff like that. They salted it down. I know you can salt down meat, and there's a recipe that we have for fish. And what you do is you use a lot of salt on this, and you would think, oh, it's going to be horrible, salty tasting fish. It's not. Basically, what you're doing is you're combining a bunch of salt. You'll put salt down. You need aluminum foil. You'll put about an inch. Yeah, I'm not kidding. About an inch of what you think on the bottom of, and it's going to be heavy now, on the bottom of the aluminum foil, and then you'll put the fish on top of it, and then you're just going to cover it with more salt. You may have to moisten the salt just a little bit just to make sure it sticks on there. And then you'll fold it up in the foil, and then you'll put it in your oven, and you'll cook it for just about 20 minutes, depending on the size of the fish. If it's a big fish, it's going to be every bit of 20 minutes. If it's a smaller one, well, then, of course, it's going to be a lot less than that, maybe even 10 minutes. I would check it after 10 minutes. And now what's going to happen is it's going to harden. And you'll practically have to use a hammer to get that salt down, to get it cracked. I mean, you'll be cracking it. And again, you would think, oh my God, it's going to be awful tasting salty, and it's not. And somehow that goes down into that, and somehow that it steams it, and it's really good tasting fish. I mean, it tastes awesome. Okay, let's talk about pickles. Oh, we always do pickles, and I believe you can pickle anything. And so my friend Mike, Loretta Rogers' husband, he pickles actually green beans. And so what happened is I sprouted green bean seeds. I didn't think they would all come up. Guess what? They all did. So I'm going to have a lot of green beans I'm going to have to do something with this summer. And I'm going to pickle them. I think they're awesome. So another common way of preserving food was pickling. This is an ancient method that colonists used for everything from meat to fish to fruits and vegetables. A dish of pickled vegetables was a favorite side dish on colonial tables, while beef was commonly pickled in vinegar and brine and preserved in large wooden barrels. The colonial brines were likely flavored with salt, saltpeter, and spices, but they would not have contained garlic, which Nohan says was seen as purely medicinal until the 19th century. I didn't know that. I thought, you always ate garlic with everything. So it was only for medicine. And garlic is good for a lot of things. It most certainly is. So my grandparents, so we bought the farm. My grandparents lived here. My granddad bought it in 1938. And so behind the house, at the back of the house, there's a building back there, and they called it the smokehouse. And my grandparents used to smoke hams and turkeys and all kinds of foods. And I've heard my grandmother talk about they saved corn, the husk of corn. They always planted corn. So they save that husk. And so what they would do is make that up in like their sausage and stuff like that. So we'd get that sausage and they would save it and put it in that husk. And then they would get some kind of twine and seal it kind of with that twine, and they would put other things around it, like some kind of grease or something, and they would keep it hanging on these little ropes or twine in that smokehouse in there. I bet it used to smell divine, didn't it? And I also remember my grandparents would kill a hog, and so my grandmother would actually can sausage, and it was good. And so I don't know what she put in it. I've got to find out. That recipe's got to be somewhere around here. I found my grandmother's old recipes. So I bet it's in there somewhere. Of course, she never went with recipes. She just had everything memorized. But there are things that we're going to be able to do. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about something. It's a dessert. I'm going to be all eager about that dessert. It's called jumble cookies. Jumble cookies, sometimes spelled Jumbal, can be considered the ancestors of the modern sugar cookie. Everybody likes sugar cookies. But they're far less sweet, it says. So recipes appeared in cookbooks in England as early as 1585. And the cookies became a popular staple in the colonies. You'll find recipes for jumble cookies by the thousands, says Nohan. Even Martha Washington was said to have her own recipe. The recipe in The Complete Housewife, now again, this is spelled Compleat, housewife, calls for egg whites, flour, sugar, and caraway seeds, and they were mashed into a paste. And also, Nahon says colonial cooks often flavored their jumble cookies with rose water. This is a Middle Eastern import that reflected the vibrant trade and open-minded culture. Now, Dutch settlers had established in the middle colonies from the beginning. There were a variety of foodways here, he said. So when you say the colonial era, everyone thinks everything is great, but that's not true. She said that they had a lot of richness there. That sounds good. Okay, I've got time for these. Pepper cake. So black pepper's antibacterial properties make it a good preservative. And this imported spice took center stage in the pepper cake. Now, this is a gingerbread-like loaf, and it's flavored with black pepper and molasses and studded with candied fruits. The classic colonial era recipe for pepper cakes, ye keep half a year, was included in the Book of Cookery. It's a handwritten manuscript that was given to Martha Washington on the occasion of her marriage to her first husband, Daniel Custis, in 1749. Okay, let's find out what syllabub is. I'll see if we have time. I'll go ahead and look up that pepper cake recipe, and then I'll share it with you. Okay, syllabub. Okay, colonial Americans apparently drank a lot of alcohol. They shouldn't have done it, but they did. And this popular drink dessert dated to the 18th century, combined with sweetened whipped cream with wine or hard cider. Now, the resulting frothy concoction was often served on special occasions. So Amelia Simmons' American Cookery, which in 1796 became the first cookbook by an American to be published in the United States, included a recipe for a syllabub that called for the cook to flavor cider with sugar, and then they did a grate of nutmeg into it and milk a cow directly into the liquor, into the alcohol. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get back to, let's see if I can find a pepper cake recipe. That sounds pretty exciting. So they aged these pepper cakes for 6 months. Okay, so here's how you do it. Let's see. Oh my goodness, the measurements are just a little bit different. Okay, so they have the measurements we use now. I'll go ahead and give you the measurements first. Okay, so for 1 pound, you'll need about 2 cups of molasses, 4 cups of flour. Man, it's going to make a big cake. 1/2 ounce or 3 tablespoons of pepper. You'll need 3 tablespoons of ginger. And we got that ginger, I got that ginger root right here. And I'm going to plant this and see if I can have my own ginger growing out here in the garden. Now, I would assume that you shred that. We'll find out in just a minute. Okay, so you'll also need 3 tablespoons of coriander. You'll need 1½ tablespoons of caraway, 1½ tablespoons of anise seed. You'll also need 1½ tablespoons of dried orange peel and 1 cup of candied fruit. Okay, now to recreate this recipe, she said she used the Heckler's unbleached flour, which had been in production since 1843. And there are stone ground 18th century flours available online, but she decided this was a decent substitute just for her purposes. So, to 4 cups of flour, she said, I added my spices, starting with 1/2 ounce of coarse ground Limburg pepper. And the variety I suspect would have been available when this recipe was written. She also used 1/2 ounce of surprisingly large amounts of spice, about 3 tablespoons. Ginger and coriander went in next, followed by caraway. She said I used both ground and whole caraway seeds just to add some texture. She said I was unable to find the anise seeds, so I substituted a similar, it's kind of a licorice kind of tasting. We talked about that in the previous show. So she used licorice tasting fennel seeds. She said, which I pounded with the dried orange peel in a makeshift mortar and pestle, a muddler, and a measuring cup. So after the dry ingredients, she says she added the molasses and she stirred the bowl into a deep brown goo. And then she went on ahead and folded everything together. And she said it was kind of like this big solid mass. She baked it, and she said this actually lasted for this cake actually lasted for 6 months. That is something else. My name is Donna Feazell. Thank you so much for watching The Edge on IC Radio, your source for news and entertainment. You can also find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications, and Abundant Television found on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. Don't forget the podcast, netnewsnetwork.net. Thank you so much for watching.